The sky over Europe in the summer of 1943 was a living battlefield. Clouds drifted lazily across the horizon, but high above them, American and German planes danced a deadly ballet. In the midst of this chaos, a lone P-51 Mustang streaked through the air, engines roaring, guns ready. Its pilot, a young African-American aviator of the famed Tuskegee Red Tails, pushed his aircraft into an audacious maneuver, flipping upside down, diving directly beneath the enemy formation, and firing in a perfect arc. From the ground, the German pilots watching this spectacle could barely believe their eyes. They had mocked the Red Tails for their skin color, assuming the young men from Alabama could not match their experience. Yet here they were, defying physics, expectation, and prejudice, turning what seemed like reckless acrobatics into lethal strategy. The question hung in the smoke-filled sky. How could these pilots, initially underestimated and ridiculed, achieve such extraordinary results? The story begins not with glory, but with skepticism and ridicule. German pilots had nicknamed them the Red Tails, referencing the bright scarlet paint on the tails of their fighters. It was meant as an insult, a mocking label for a group they thought would never pose a real threat. And at first, perhaps, it seemed to fit. The Tuskegee Airmen faced entrenched discrimination, limited resources, and equipment, often inferior to the Luftwaffe's latest models. Their aircraft were slower than the Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 109s that patrolled the skies over Europe, and their numbers were too few to dominate the air alone. Yet the Red Tails were not ordinary pilots. They were meticulously trained, disciplined, and unafraid to innovate under pressure. On this particular day over the skies of Italy, they demonstrated a maneuver that would become legendary, flying inverted beneath enemy aircraft to gain a sudden angle of attack, exploiting physics and the enemy's expectations. To the German pilots, it looked like madness. To the Red Tails, it was precise, calculated, and deadly. The Tuskegee Airmen's ascent in the air war was not merely about aircraft or numbers. It was about ingenuity, courage, and a willingness to embrace the unconventional. Every engagement, every split-second decision, was a gamble with life itself. The sky was a chessboard, and these young men were learning moves that would change the game. This was a world where seconds counted. A single misjudgment could mean death. Yet these aviators turned fear into advantage. They were fighting not only for victory, but for respect, for recognition, and for the belief that skill could overcome prejudice. And as they maneuvered above the European landscape, cutting through clouds and gunfire, one thing became clear. The Red Tails were rewriting the rules of aerial combat. The first question that every historian, every witness, and every pilot would later ask was simple yet profound. Why did these young men adopt such audacious tactics? And how did their unconventional approach contribute to the defeat of some of the Luftwaffe's best aces? From the bombing runs over Sicily to the dogfights in southern France, the Tuskegee Airmen were on a trajectory that would leave an indelible mark on history. Their maneuvers were not mere stunts. They were carefully considered innovations designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of more experienced foes. As this story unfolds, we will witness how derision turned into awe, how mockery became admiration, and how the Red Tails' courage reshaped the very concept of air combat during the Second World War. Imagine the tension in the cockpit. Every instrument reading, every glance at the sky, every twitch of the joystick could mean survival or catastrophe. Yet in these moments of extreme peril, creativity flourished. The maneuvers that once seemed reckless became a symbol of American ingenuity and the extraordinary will to triumph against all odds. In the pages of history, the Tuskegee Airmen would become icons, not only for their aerial victories but for proving that excellence could transcend prejudice. And as we lift off into the stories of their battles, victories, and innovations, one question will guide us. How did a group of young, underestimated pilots evolve into one of the most formidable air forces of their time, earning over 100 confirmed kills and rewriting the rules of aerial warfare? By 1941, the skies over Europe and North Africa were dominated by highly experienced Luftwaffe pilots flying the formidable Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s. The Allies, still building up their air power, faced daunting challenges. American aircraft like the P-40 Warhawk and early models of the P-51 Mustang were robust but often outmatched in speed, maneuverability, and climb rate. Pilots had to rely on tactical ingenuity to survive encounters with veteran German aces. The Tuskegee Airmen entered this arena in 1942 as the U.S. Army Air Forces began integrating African American pilots into combat roles. Trained at the Tuskegee Army Air Field in Alabama, these men faced extraordinary obstacles even before reaching the European theater. Racial prejudice was pervasive. Some senior officers openly doubted their abilities, calling them unsuitable for combat. Supplies and modern aircraft were often diverted to other units, leaving the Red Tails with older P-40s and early Mustangs that lacked the advanced features of their adversaries' planes. Despite these challenges, the airmen were meticulously trained. Each pilot learned to master aerobatics, gunnery, formation flying, and the principles of energy management in aerial combat. Their instructors emphasized discipline, communication, and innovation. It was a curriculum designed to make up for deficiencies in equipment with superior skill and teamwork. The theaters of operation added further complexity. In North Africa and the Mediterranean, pilots confronted the agile Messerschmitt Bf 109s, whose high climb rate and tight turning radius allowed German pilots to dictate engagements. In Sicily and southern Italy, dogfights often unfolded at high altitudes, where the thin air reduced engine performance and demanded precise throttle and fuel management. The Luftwaffe's experience, honed through years of early war campaigns, meant that American pilots were frequently outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Early encounters revealed the limitations of standard American tactics. The traditional boom and zoom approach, diving from high altitude to attack, then climbing away to safety, was sometimes effective against slower, less aggressive opponents, but against the experienced Luftwaffe, it often failed. German pilots could predict attack patterns, counter with rapid maneuvers, and exploit the weaknesses of Allied aircraft. Several missions ended in heavy losses, shaking the confidence of young pilots and exposing the urgent need for innovation. Among the Red Tails, leaders emerged who would shape the tactics and ethos of the unit. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the first African-American general in the U.S. Air Force, commanded the 332nd Fighter Group with a combination of discipline and encouragement. He emphasized formation integrity, mutual protection, and strategic flexibility, insisting that pilots maintain cohesion even under extreme pressure. Lieutenant Charles "Charlie" Dryden, a gifted tactician, experimented with unconventional attack angles and formation adjustments, while Captain Lee Archer, one of the most celebrated Red Tails, often pushed the limits of aerial maneuvers, daring to fly in ways others would not. Equipment differences also played a crucial role. The P-40 Warhawks, sturdy but slower, were vulnerable in turning fights. The introduction of the P-51 Mustang in late 1943 marked a turning point. Equipped with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Mustang offered superior speed, range, and high-altitude performance, allowing pilots to escort bombers deep into enemy territory and challenge Luftwaffe fighters more effectively. Yet even with this technological advantage, success relied on tactics, discipline, and the audacity to try maneuvers that defied conventional wisdom. The Red Tail's early missions highlighted the tension between innovation and skepticism. Commanders often doubted new ideas, fearing unnecessary risk, while pilots recognized that adhering strictly to traditional maneuvers could mean death. It was a delicate balance. To survive, the airmen needed to understand the capabilities of their aircraft, anticipate enemy reactions, and exploit psychological and physical vulnerabilities. Europe's air war demanded adaptability. Dogfights were not static affairs. They were fluid, chaotic, and deadly. Pilots had to read the sky like a chessboard, predicting where the enemy would move, how formations would shift, and when a single miscalculation could turn advantage into disaster. Against this backdrop, the Red Tails began experimenting with maneuvers that seemed reckless to outsiders: high-speed dives, inverted attacks, and unexpected angles of approach. These were not stunts. They were solutions to the deadly puzzle of aerial combat. By late 1943, the stage was set for the Red Tails to prove their worth. German pilots continued to underestimate them, believing that racial prejudice reflected natural limits of skill. Yet the Tuskegee Airmen were quietly rewriting the rules of engagement. What began as a group of underdog pilots, doubted and mocked by both enemies and allies, was evolving into a unit capable of extraordinary precision, daring, and tactical brilliance. And as these young men took to the skies over Sicily, Italy, and France, one question grew louder with each mission. How could a small, underestimated group of pilots defy expectations and begin to dominate the skies, achieving feats that their opponents had deemed impossible? By late 1943, the Tuskegee Airmen had seen enough. Their initial missions over Europe and North Africa exposed the brutal reality of air combat against seasoned Luftwaffe pilots. Early optimism was fading, replaced by a sobering awareness. Conventional tactics were failing, and the skies were unforgiving. Amid the trials and mounting losses of 1943, a quiet revolution was taking shape within the 332nd Fighter Group. The Red Tails understood that traditional tactics, dive and zoom attacks, standard formation flying, and predictable approaches, were no longer sufficient. To survive, they had to invent a method that leveraged both their aircraft's strengths and the enemy's weaknesses. The breakthrough came from a combination of observation, ingenuity, and sheer courage. Lieutenant Charles Dryden, who had studied enemy patterns meticulously, noticed that German pilots often anticipated American attack vectors. The Luftwaffe excelled at exploiting predictable dives and turns. Dryden proposed a daring idea. Why not turn the sky itself into a trap, attacking from angles the enemy never expected? The maneuver was radical: inverted flying beneath the enemy formation, climbing into position from below, and striking at the blind spots of even the most experienced adversaries. Testing the tactic was risky. Early simulations in training flights revealed how disorienting it could be. Pilots had to maintain control while upside down, gauge their altitude precisely, and time their attack with split-second accuracy. One miscalculation could result in catastrophic collision or loss of life. Yet the Red Tails approached the challenge with characteristic discipline. Instructors and volunteers ran repeated trials, gradually mastering inverted dives, treetop low passes, and sudden high G turns designed to confuse the enemy and exploit the P-51 Mustang's superior high-altitude performance. Initial reactions from command were skeptical. Reports of pilots planning inverted attacks sounded reckless. Officers feared that the audacity might lead to unnecessary losses, yet the pilots argued persuasively. Conventional methods had already cost too many lives. If the Luftwaffe expected predictable maneuvers, then unpredictability itself could become a weapon. After intense debates, Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. granted cautious approval, trusting his pilot's judgment and recognizing that innovation was essential for survival. The first operational test of the tactic occurred over the skies of southern Italy. A squadron of Red Tails, flying P-51 Mustangs, encountered a formation of Focke-Wulf 190s escorting German bombers. As the Germans advanced, the Red Tails executed the inverted maneuver for the first time in combat. Lieutenant Dryden, leading the attack, flipped his Mustang upside down, diving beneath the unsuspecting enemy formation. In a perfectly timed strike, his guns found their mark, taking down a Focke-Wulf before the pilot could react. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Confusion rippled through the German squadron. Pilots wrenched their aircraft to evade attacks coming from impossible angles. The Red Tails exploited this chaos, pressing their advantage. Within minutes, 3 enemy aircraft were destroyed, and the rest scattered in disarray. The success of the maneuver electrified the American pilots, proving that audacity, precision, and innovation could overcome even the most skilled opponents. Word of the tactic spread rapidly within the 332nd Fighter Group. Pilots refined variations, combining inverted attacks with rapid altitude changes and formation shifts. Captain Lee Archer perfected blind spot strikes, while others experimented with synchronized team maneuvers designed to encircle enemies in seconds. The Red Tails' reputation grew not only for accuracy and bravery, but for unpredictability, a quality that terrified seasoned Luftwaffe aces. German pilots, who had once mocked the Red Tails, now faced a new reality. What was once derided as reckless acrobatics revealed itself as strategic brilliance. Reports from Luftwaffe officers documented bewilderment. American pilots were no longer predictable. They attacked from below, above, and angles previously considered impossible. The combination of the P-51 speed, the Red Tails' discipline, and the innovative maneuvers transformed engagements, turning what had been desperate missions into calculated opportunities for victory. The breakthrough marked a turning point in the Tuskegee Airmen's operational history. The inverted maneuver, along with accompanying strategies, did more than enhance survivability. It allowed the Red Tails to seize the initiative. No longer merely reacting to enemy movements, they dictated the flow of combat. Each successful engagement reinforced the principle that careful observation, innovation, and courage could redefine the rules of aerial warfare. This moment of ingenuity was more than a tactical innovation. It was a statement. Against prejudice, doubt, and a superior enemy, the Tuskegee Airmen proved that intelligence, creativity, and bravery could overcome conventional limitations. The inverted dives, treetop runs, and blind spot attacks would become their signature. setting the stage for remarkable victories that would eventually tally over 100 confirmed kills and earn them a legendary place in history. One particularly harrowing mission over Sicily in July 1943 exemplified the challenges they faced. A formation of P-40 Warhawks, tasked with escorting bombers, encountered a squadron of Bf-109s. The Warhawks, sturdy but slow in the turn, struggled to match the nimble German fighters. Within minutes, several American aircraft were lost. Pilots reported disorientation and surprise at the enemy's aggression. Lieutenant Charles Dryden recalled later that day, "We thought we had a plan, but the Luftwaffe didn't play by the rules we knew." Losses were not only physical but psychological. Young aviators watched comrades fall from the sky, sometimes with no chance to return fire. The pressure was immense. Every decision could result in death, yet hesitation could be fatal as well. The unit began to feel the weight of two battles, one against the enemy in the air, the other against systemic prejudice on the ground. Commanders doubted unconventional ideas, and the pilots themselves wrestled with fear, frustration, and the constant awareness of limited options. Tactical rigidity became the enemy's ally. Standard formation flying and boom and zoom tactics were effective only against predictable opponents. Against the Luftwaffe's veterans, these maneuvers were often anticipated and countered. One engagement over southern Italy ended disastrously when a group of red tails attempted a traditional dive bomb attack on a squadron of Focke-Wulf 190s. The German pilots, exploiting the Warhawks' slower climb rate, countered with sharp vertical turns and forced several American planes into spins they could not recover from. 4 pilots were shot down in less than 10 minutes. Such setbacks demanded reflection. The pilots knew the war required more than courage. It required ingenuity. Stories circulated of red tails narrowly escaping death thanks to quick thinking or luck. Maneuvers improvised mid-flight to avoid enemy fire. Each story reinforced the notion that survival depended on thinking differently, challenging established norms, and taking calculated risks that others might consider reckless. Meanwhile, morale was tested not only by losses, but also by skepticism from higher command. Some officers questioned whether African American pilots could innovate under pressure, assuming adherence to conventional tactics would be safer. Yet the red tails recognized a paradox. The very tactics meant to minimize risk were in fact insufficient against the enemy's skill. Innovation became not optional, but essential. Amid the setbacks, individual pilots began experimenting with unorthodox strategies. Captain Lee Archer, known for his daring, attempted a steep diving attack from an unexpected angle during a routine patrol over Italy. The maneuver was improvised, based on observation and instinct, rather than formal training. To Archer's surprise, it succeeded in downing a Bf-109 that had outmaneuvered a more conventional approach. Such incidents sparked debates within the unit. Were these reckless stunts, or the beginnings of a new paradigm in aerial combat? The crisis extended beyond tactics. Supply shortages, limited aircraft upgrades, and relentless combat rotations compounded the danger. Pilots faced fatigue, mechanical failures, and the constant threat of anti-aircraft fire from the ground. Every mission was a test of endurance and nerve. Yet within this crucible of adversity, the seeds of innovation were planted. The red tails began to understand that surviving and excelling required bending the rules, creating new maneuvers, exploiting enemy assumptions, and daring what others deemed impossible. It was a pivotal moment. The unit stood at a crossroads. Continue with familiar tactics and risk annihilation, or embrace creativity and gamble on methods that seemed insane to outsiders. The question that loomed over every briefing, every pre-flight check, and every climb into the clouds was stark. How could a small, underestimated group of pilots overcome both a superior enemy and the constraints imposed by prejudice? And what bold innovations could tip the scales of aerial warfare in their favor? From the crucible of failure emerged determination. The Red Tails understood that the path forward would require audacity, precision, and a willingness to defy convention. It was a turning point that would set the stage for breakthroughs that changed not only their fate, but the very nature of the air war in Europe. The implementation of the new tactics marked a turning point for the Tuskegee Airmen. As the Red Tails refined their inverted dives, blind spot attacks, and synchronized formation maneuvers, their combat effectiveness skyrocketed. Missions that had once resulted in heavy casualties now yielded decisive victories. Pilots who had faced overwhelming odds found themselves in positions of control, dictating the flow of aerial engagements. One notable mission occurred in late 1943 over the skies of southern France. A squadron of 15 Red Tails, escorting B-17 bombers, encountered a group of 20 Focke-Wulf 190s. Utilizing the inverted dive tactic in combination with rapid altitude shifts, the Red Tails achieved what had previously seemed impossible. 7 enemy fighters were destroyed in under 10 minutes, without a single loss among the escorting American aircraft. The Germans, initially mocking the Red Tails, now viewed them with a mixture of disbelief and respect. Reports from Luftwaffe intelligence noted the increasing unpredictability and daring of these pilots, highlighting the threat posed by innovation in combat. However, victories were never without cost. The aggressive maneuvers demanded precision, discipline, and constant vigilance. Pilots occasionally misjudged altitudes or angles, resulting in collisions or near misses. Mechanical failures under the strain of high-G inverted dives led to several emergency landings. These setbacks served as reminders that innovation carried risks, and even the most carefully honed tactics could fail if misapplied. Yet, each error became a lesson, further refining the Red Tails' approach and enhancing their overall effectiveness. The cumulative effect of these tactics extended beyond individual missions. The Red Tails' ability to control engagements forced the Luftwaffe to reconsider their assumptions about American pilots. German strategists, accustomed to predictable maneuvers, now faced an opponent who could attack from unconventional angles, disrupt formations, and execute precision strikes with remarkable consistency. This shift in dynamics altered the balance of air power in key theaters of the war. The impact was also psychological. The Red Tails' reputation for ingenuity and fearlessness began to influence morale on both sides. For American forces, their success proved that training, discipline, and courage could overcome prejudice and numerical disadvantages. For German pilots, the Red Tails became a source of unease. The unpredictability of their attacks forced even the most experienced aces to exercise caution, slowing their tempo and reducing the effectiveness of traditional dogfighting tactics. Throughout 1944, as the Allies advanced through Italy and into southern France, the Red Tails continued to accumulate victories. Lieutenant Lee Archer achieved multiple confirmed kills using these innovative tactics, becoming one of the most decorated African American pilots of the war. The unit's collective tally surpassed 100 enemy aircraft destroyed, a remarkable feat, considering their initial disadvantages in equipment and resources. Each victory reinforced the principle that audacity and ingenuity could redefine the limits of combat effectiveness. Yet the journey was never simple. Commanders and pilots alike learned that overconfidence could be fatal. Several missions exposed the dangers of assuming perfection in execution. A misjudged inverted dive during a heavy engagement led to the loss of a Mustang and the temporary grounding of the squadron for repairs. These incidents underscored a vital lesson. Innovation required discipline, careful planning, and constant evaluation. Victory was earned through skill and prudence, not merely boldness. The Red Tails' success had broader implications. Their innovative tactics demonstrated the value of adaptability and creative thinking in warfare. Techniques once considered reckless became integrated into standard training for other units, influencing Allied air strategy in subsequent campaigns. The Tuskegee Airmen had transformed their initial disadvantage into a defining strength, proving that resourcefulness, courage, and ingenuity could overcome systemic and tactical obstacles alike. Ultimately, the Red Tails' impact extended beyond the battlefield. Their victories challenged deeply ingrained prejudices, both within the military and society at large. They became living proof that talent and determination could transcend racial barriers. Each successful mission, each innovative maneuver, contributed not only to the Allied war effort, but to the broader struggle for recognition, equality, and justice. In the end, the story of the Red Tails' victories illustrates a profound truth. Innovation in the face of adversity can redefine outcomes, but it is accompanied by risk, responsibility, and relentless refinement. The Tuskegee Airmen's legacy is a testament to what can be achieved when courage meets creativity and when the human spirit refuses to accept limitations imposed by prejudice or circumstance. The skies over Europe eventually grew quieter as the Allies advanced and the Luftwaffe's dominance waned. But the mark left by the Tuskegee Airmen remained indelible. The Red Tails had transformed the rules of aerial combat, proving that innovation, courage, and discipline could overcome not only a formidable enemy, but also systemic prejudice. Their legacy extends far beyond the hundreds of missions flown, the dozens of enemy aircraft downed, and the countless lives protected. It is a story of resilience, creativity, and the enduring human spirit. Many of the Red Tails went on to illustrious careers in the military and civilian life. Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., the architect of the unit's discipline and strategy, eventually became the first African-American general in the U.S. Air Force, breaking barriers and inspiring generations of pilots. Captain Lee Archer, one of the unit's most daring aces, continued to advocate for civil rights and aerospace innovation. Lieutenant Charles Dryden, whose keen observation and tactical insight had catalyzed some of the unit's most revolutionary maneuvers, became a celebrated strategist and mentor. Each story exemplifies how courage and ingenuity can ripple outward, shaping not just a war, but the course of history. The tactical innovations pioneered by the Red Tails influenced the broader development of aerial warfare. Inverted dives, blind spot attacks, and synchronized team maneuvers were eventually incorporated into formal training programs across Allied air forces. The principle was clear. Adaptability and creative problem-solving are as critical as firepower and numbers. The Red Tails had demonstrated that the human mind, when faced with adversity, could generate solutions that machines or brute force alone could not match. Yet, the greatest lesson lies not in the tactics themselves, but in the courage to challenge convention. For years, the Red Tails were doubted, ridiculed, and underestimated. They faced prejudice in their own ranks, skepticism from commanders, and the lethal prowess of an experienced enemy. And yet, they did not simply survive, they excelled. Their story reminds us that progress often arises from the boldness to step into the unknown, to innovate under pressure, and to embrace risk with intelligence and discipline. Even as time moves on, the Red Tails' flights resonate as a metaphor for human potential. They soared not merely in machines, but over barriers of prejudice, fear, and limitation. Each dive, climb, and maneuver was a testament to resilience, a declaration that talent and ingenuity are not constrained by circumstance. In every successful engagement, there was a lesson for future generations: that innovation is born in crisis, courage is forged in adversity, and legacy is built by those willing to push boundaries others fear to approach. In the end, the Tuskegee Airmen's story transcends war. It is a narrative about vision, daring, and the profound impact of individuals united by purpose and principle. They remind us that history is shaped not only by armies and machines, but by the choices of those willing to think differently, to act boldly, and to embrace the risk inherent in change. And as the sun sets over the European skies where the Red Tails once flew, one thought echoes above all: true greatness is measured not by how easily one follows the rules, but by the courage to rewrite them in pursuit of justice, excellence, and the enduring spirit of humanity.